Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, we're exploring one of the most magnificent, truly foundational texts in human history, the Ramayana. We're talking about a massive 24,000-verse epic that has quite literally shaped the cultural and spiritual landscape of the Indian subcontinent for thousands of years. But listen, we aren't just going to sit here and recap the plot today. We want to dig a lot deeper. We're going to uncover the profound concepts of duty, some absolutely breathtaking examples of devotion, and ultimately a really fascinating psychological map of the human mind that's basically been hiding in plain sight this whole time. So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with its origins as the first epic poem, then look at Rama as the ideal man, followed by Lakshmana's ultimate devotion. After that, we'll decode that hidden psychological allegory, and wrap things up with the lasting legacy of the Ramayana.
All right, section 1, the first epic poem. Let's talk about where this monumental story actually comes from.
So, according to the ancient texts, this whole thing was famously born out of a profound sense of empathy. Picture this. The sage Valmiki is walking along a river, and he spots a pair of birds just playing together, completely in love. But suddenly, out of nowhere, a cruel fowler shoots the male bird. Valmiki sees the female bird grieving in absolute agony, and he feels this intense, overwhelming pity. In fact, it was so intense that a curse spontaneously burst from his lips, and it came out in a perfectly rhythmic, musical verse. It was right there, from that core of deep empathy and sorrow, that the melody of the Ramayana was actually born. And that empathy brilliantly illustrates the central figures of our story. Right in the center, we've got our hero, Rama, holding his signature bow. To his right is his incredibly resilient wife, Sita. To his left is his fiercely loyal younger brother, Lakshmana. And kneeling down in absolute devotion is the mighty Hanuman. Pretty much everything we discuss today is going to revolve around the dynamic between these specific characters.
Now, to truly appreciate the Ramayana, you kind of have to wrap your head around its massive scale. We are talking about 24,000 verses. Those verses are grouped into 500 different chapters, holding thousands of years of historical, cultural, and spiritual weight. So it's not just a story you tell around a fire. It's an entire framework that millions of people use to conceptualize the world, figure out ethics, and honestly just navigate the complexities of life.
Let's move to the timeline and see how this actually builds across its 7 major sections or khandas. Starting chronologically, we get Rama's youth, but the real core conflict kicks off during year 1 of the Ayodhya Khanda. That's when a massive 14-year exile begins. Fast forward to year 13, deep in the forest, and Sia is tragically abducted. This kicks off a frantic, desperate search, which eventually leads to a colossal great war in Lanka. Finally, after 14 incredibly long years, we get the triumphant return. Having this chronological roadmap in the back of your mind is super helpful before we zoom in on the characters themselves.
Moving on to part 2, Rama, the ideal man, and the ethics of character.
In Hindu tradition, Rama is revered as an avatar of the divine, but the text itself actually puts a huge focus on portraying him as a mortal exemplar. Basically, he is the ultimate benchmark for how a human being should conduct themselves under immense pressure. To really understand him, we need to anchor ourselves with 2 crucial Sanskrit terms. First is dharma, which means righteous duty. The second is Maryada Purushottama, which literally translates to the great man who perfectly follows righteousness. Rama's entire existence in this epic is completely bound by selfless service. Every single decision he makes is dictated by his social, royal, and family duties. He literally tosses his own personal desires out the window.
And you can see exactly how this plays out across his different societal roles. Take him as the ideal son. When his father is forced to banish him, Rama doesn't throw a fit or fight for his rightful throne. He just calmly accepts a 14-year exile to honor his father's word. As the ideal husband, he crosses an entire ocean and fights a cosmic war just to rescue Sita. As the ideal brother, he shows absolute, unwavering loyalty, refusing to take the throne early, even when his own brother Bharata is begging him to. And finally, as the ideal king, he consistently puts the welfare and stability of his community way ahead of his own personal happiness. Now, what's really interesting about this is how Valmiki's ancient text zeroes in on his temperament. Notice the emphasis here on him being extremely compassionate, able to control his anger. This is a key point. Rama's incredibly stoic. He's gentle. Even when his enemies are saying the most horrible, harsh things to him, he doesn't bite back. He doesn't respond in kind. He is fundamentally this steady, pacifying force in a completely chaotic world.
Which brings us to section 3, Lakshmana, ultimate devotion and the reality of sacrifice.
Here's the thing, though. A purely gentle force is actually pretty vulnerable in a dangerous world, right? And that brings us to Rama's younger brother, Lakshmana, and this concept of seva, or selfless devotion. The contrast between these two brothers is just perfectly balanced. While Rama is deeply calm and stoic, Lakshmana acts as the active protective fire. He is quick to express righteous indignation. He's got a seriously fiery temperament. But you gotta understand, this wasn't a character flaw, it was a totally necessary counterbalance. Out there in the perilous, demon-filled Dandaka forest, Rama's gentle disposition could have easily been exploited. Lakshmana was the pragmatist. He was the problem solver and the fierce enforcer of justice who actively kept them alive.
And the personal sacrifices Lakshmana made to execute this duty? Absolutely staggering. He voluntarily left his own wife, Urmila, behind in the royal city, just so he could go protect his brother in the wild. And get this, according to the text, he gave up sleep for 14 straight years, literally staying awake every single night to guard their hermitage. It was because of this unparalleled, mind-bending discipline that he became the only warrior capable of defeating the seemingly invincible enemy general, Indrajit. Lakshmana basically proves that true greatness doesn't always mean you're the one sitting on the throne. Sometimes, true greatness is finding a profound purpose by supporting others from the shadows.
All right, part 4, the hidden psychological allegory. This is where things get really fascinating.
So the crucial point is, this might not just be an external story. This is the intellectual climax of our explainer today. Great spiritual scholars argue that this entire epic is actually a hidden map of our own minds. Let's decode the mythology step by step here. In this allegory, Rama represents jnana, which means true knowledge. Sita, she represents inner peace. Now who steals our inner peace? Ravana, and Ravana represents ahamkara, which is the ego. Remember how Ravana famously has 10 heads? Well, those represent the 10 senses that are constantly pulling our ego in a dozen different directions. He takes Sita to the island fortress of Lanka. In this setup, Lanka is actually the physical body, specifically the 9-gated physical body, representing the 9 openings of the human form. To defeat the ego and reclaim peace, true knowledge needs a powerful ally, and that is Vibhishana, who represents the intellect. When you read the text this way, it completely transforms the whole thing. It is not just a literal war with arrows and swords, it's the internal, psychological struggle of true knowledge fighting a massive, multi-headed ego just to reclaim internal peace.
Finally, Section 5, the legacy of the Ramayana.
Ultimately, yes, the epic ends in the literal victory of good over evil, the return to Ayodhya, and the establishment of a perfect society. But its true, lasting legacy is how it has been internalized by people over millennia. This deep allegorical analysis we just talked about, that is not some modern trendy invention. It has been meticulously preserved and taught by spiritual leaders and scholars for generations. Thinkers like Swami Shivananda have long emphasized that studying this epic isn't just about memorizing ancient history. It's about overhauling our own worldly nature. It's about changing our materialistic habits and actively pursuing an internal state of Rama Raja, which means achieving an ideal, peaceful governance of our own minds.
And that leaves us with a really powerful final thought to reflect on today. If the Ramayana is indeed a map of the human mind, and it represents a battle that is happening inside you right now, which character is currently ruling yours? Is your mind being governed by the chaotic, pull-in-every-direction multi-headed ego of Ravana, or are you actively cultivating the true knowledge of Rama, backed up by the fierce discipline of Lakshmana to protect your inner peace? It's a pretty profound question to carry with you. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, keep reflecting, and I'll see you next time.